Over the years, Brian and Stewie had undergone a lot together. The two had developed a close bond over the years and had tackled a lot of insane obstacles. From Brian trying to gain closure with his mother to Stewie having to be saved from the bottom of a trench. The two have come through for each other time and time again. However, out of all the adventures that Brian and Stewie have had since the beginning of the series, which ones stand out as the most memorable? We're starting off our list at number 10 with Saving Rupert. Episode 13 in season 20, Lawyer Guy, mainly focused on Peter dealing with his new neighbour, while the B story centered on Brian and Stewie. After Brian wanted some lobster and became annoyed at the idea of standing in line all day, Stewie suggested a solution. After all, they did live right on the coast, so why not go out and try to catch some lobster themselves? The two quickly gathered a boat and supplies, but had their focus taken off of gathering lobster when Rupert fell into the water and quickly sank. This wasn't the first time that Stewie drugged Brian into an adventure revolving around retrieving Rupert, so the canine was quick to go along with it, putting on some scuba gear with Stewie to try and reach the stuffed bear. The first attempt came close, but after an encounter with a shark, Rupert wound up falling even further into the depths. After regrouping back on the boat, Stewie demanded that they get back into the water. This time, however, Brian protested. With Rupert now in the trench, he would be almost impossible to reach without them being placed in danger. Stewie refused to leave without his bear and so dove back in alone. This adventure of theirs was closer to home and tamer than many of the others they've been on, but it deserved a mention for a few reasons. But before we talk about them in this video is sponsored by Raid Shadow Legends. Explore millions of champion combinations and master countless tactics as you take on bosses, dungeon runs, campaign battles and more. I've been playing Raid for a while now, and two of my favourite champions are Astrolon and Battle Sage. Astrolon looks insane with dual wielding swords and the fact that he's a perfect pick for Arena, especially if paired with Countess Lix as they become an unstoppable match. Battle Sage on the other hand is perfect if you want to get through faction wars, Doom Towers, Dragon Lairs and Spider Den. She's one of the only champions with AoE as a default skill. Raid has special events every single day, including an entirely new event for the summer solstice. Called the Path of Light, you'll be able to explore 3 branching paths to get the rewards you want the most. On top of that, there are some awesome new champions coming out as well, and also some amazing upcoming skins for the champion Trunda. You can also unlock Deliana for free, just by playing and logging into Raid for 7 days. This is the best time to get started in Raid, and if you click our link in the description or scan our QR code here on the screen, you'll get a free starter pack worth almost $30. We're talking a free epic champion, Vergis, 200k silver, 1 energy refill, 1 XP boost and 1 ancient shard, so you can summon awesome champions as soon as you get in game. All of this treasure will be waiting for you here. Also, don't forget to use the promo code MyDeliana to get 50 XP brews to instantly get her to max level and get a bunch of free silver. First, you can guess the level of determination needed to swim to such a depth. We can see how Stewie's gear was unable to take all the pressure, cracking as he descended deeper. Second, this was an adventure that helped to show just how vulnerable Stewie actually is. It's rare that he's considered an infant, even if it's something that all of the fans are aware of. Sure, we know that Stewie is a baby, but it's not normal to see him act like one. Every now and then, he has a tantrum or shows how little he knows about colours and shapes. Seeing Stewie slowly run out of oxygen and decide to spend what may be his final moments cuddling his stuffed bear was upsetting. Thankfully, Brian had decided to go and retrieve Stewie when a little too much time had passed. At number 9 is Big Trouble in Little Quahog. After Stewie was gifted with a dog whistle from attending a birthday party, Brian had decided to keep the infant from using it by placing it on a table out of reach. Rather than coming up with a way to simply reach the whistle and use it on Brian again, Stewie came up with a much more convoluted way to get revenge. Stewie built a time machine to shrink Brian's molecular structure, giving a nice nod to the Honey I Shrunk the Kids franchise as it set off the events of the episode. Though Stewie had lured Brian into the room to be shrunk and was happy to taunt the canine, he was willing to restore Brian to his original size fairly quickly. All he asked for was for Brian to lavish him with compliments. Unfortunately, Brian was taken by a rat as Stewie was programming the machine, leading to Stewie needing to shrink down to go and save the dog. They did manage to get back to the machine, but due to a misunderstanding, Brian wound up shrinking them even smaller after pressing the wrong button. These two were then thrown around in a vacuum, stuck in mucus, and had to make the long trek from the trash to reach the machine. Taking the number 8 spot is Road to Germany. When Mort wound up using the time machine thinking it was a porta-john, he was sent back to the day the German army invaded Poland and kicked off the beginning of the Second World War. The two hadn't been able to get Mort out before the tanks rolled in, but did manage to keep Mort from being imprisoned. Though they had a run-in with numerous Nazis and Hitler himself, The duo not only kept Mort safe, but traversed the occupied territory to be able to get uranium to travel back home. In at number 7 is Road to Vegas. This episode began with the idea of an ideal vacation, a simple getaway to Las Vegas to try out their hands at winning it big. Stewie had wanted them to start off the relaxing retreat without the airports, and so suggested using a new device, one that could teleport them right over to Vegas. On the surface, it appeared as though the device didn't work, for one pair of the duo anyway. With one pair stuck going through the airport, the other pair did in fact arrive through teleportation as planned. The device had an interesting side effect of not only splitting Brian and Stewie, but also divided their good luck and bad luck. While one set was trying their best to get through the airport and check into a hotel, the pair that were already in the city were already winning big. This eventually led to the unlucky pair crossing paths with a loan shark, who would hunt down and shoot the Stewie of the more fortunate duo. The unlucky pair that did take out the loan, not knowing of the other pair's existence, made the choice to take their own lives. Stewie had wound up deciding against jumping at the last minute, leading to the Brian and Stewie that were left to meet up and piece together what happened, while still leaving out what really occurred to their respective partners. Following up at number 6, we have Saving Private Brian. Brian hadn't gone to the military recruitment office to sign up. He had planned on just stopping by to give the recruiter a stern lecture for enlisting high schoolers, but made the mistake of leaving Stewie unattended. The infant had signed them both up since a cash incentive was given to anyone who signed up a friend. The two were sent off to basic training, where Stewie convinced Brian to tough it out in the hopes of gaining some discipline in his life. On the surface, it didn't seem like a bad idea, so Brian agreed to face the challenge. Little did the two of them know, they were sent to Iraq upon graduating. After several attempts to be discharged from the army, including making out and shooting each other in the foot, eventually they were informed democracy kicked in and they were able to return home. At number 5 is Back to the Pilot. Who would have thought that looking for a ball would have resulted in a horrifying array of possible futures? And all because Brian decided to tell his past self about 9/11 and reap the reward of being a hero. And when that didn't work out for him, trying to take credit for writing Harry Potter. It's common in time-traveling storylines for the climax of the story to have various versions of someone from the future come back and tell them not to do one specific task for risk of a future even being worse. The final scenes of this episode have multiple variations of Brian and Stewie, one of which where they were trapped in an endless rotation inside a barber's pole. The number 4 spot is Road to the North Pole. How could anyone forget the time that Brian and Stewie met Santa Claus? What was initially thought to be a light-hearted and vulnerable moment for Stewie dealing with the fairy tales kids are told spiraled into one of the darkest moments in all of Family Guy history. Stewie had planned on killing Santa for being slighted, only to have all of the fun taken out of it when Santa begged to be shot, putting his mouth on the barrel of Stewie's gun. Seeing the horrible conditions of the North Pole, Brian and Stewie quickly agreed to try and take over Christmas to allow Santa to rest. It did not end well. Rather than being helpful, Brian and Stewie arrived at the wrong house, assaulted a family, and left the reindeer to eat one another. Since Plan A backfired, they then decided to bring Santa on national television to tell the world what happened. It was one of the more sombering adventures the two endured and left fans with something to reflect on. Taking the number 3 ranking is Road to Europe. Stewie, being a longtime fan of the show Jolly Farm Review, had decided to run away from home to live in the fictional land of Jolly Farm. When Brian wasn't able to talk Stewie out of running away, he went along to be able to lead the infant back home once Stewie had learned the truth. This was one of the first adventures where we really saw Stewie as a naive kid. Once he arrived at the set where they taped Jolly Farm Review, he was struck with the reality that it was all fictional. The woman who played Mother Maggie was actually someone who hated children, kicking him away from her. Luckily, Brian had been there to help Stewie cheer up before taking the infant back home. In the following spot at number 2, we have The Big Bang Theory. This was probably one of the most creative episodes, with Brian and Stewie not only being thrown in the past, but being tossed out of the realm of reality completely. In this space, the two were able to become and imagine anything to happen. In order to get back home, Stewie decided to use his return pad to create a bang strong enough to launch them back into the timeline. In an odd twist of fate, Stewie compared the blast from his return pad to the Big Bang and found them to be a match. Not only did we get to see a reality in which Stewie created the universe, but this was topped with Stewie finally facing and taking down Bertram after their long rivalry. When they traced back Stewie's lineage back, they found he was descended from Leonardo da Vinci. Unfortunately, they had been unable to save the inventor, and Stewie had to be left in the past to fix the mistake. Finally, at number 1 is Road to the Multiverse. When Stewie mistakenly set his return device to shuffle, he and Brian were launched from reality to reality, showing a small number of possibilities in the multiverse. A world of hydrants, a world cased in ice, and a world drawn by Disney among many others. When they ended up in a world where humans and dogs reversed roles, Brian kept them from going back home, wanting to enjoy the possibility of being seen as the dominant species. The role reversal led to Stewie being treated in a manner that caused him to lash out and bite someone, and he was taken to the pound to be killed. Brian teamed up with the alternate versions of him and Stewie in order to save the infant, with the canine Stewie giving his return device to the duo to send them back home. The human Brian had followed them back to their original timeline, only to be quickly hit by a car. Do you agree with our ranking? What do you consider to be the top adventure Brian and Stewie have had? Let us know in the comment section below. Feel free to recommend other top 10 rankings you'd like to see us cover. Before you leave, be sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel. We are the Screen Addicts, addicted to the screen as much as you.